So, I know that everyone is probably focused on the new world quest in the Sacred Mountain right now, because the lore there is crazy. All the stuff about Xucoatl, Kukulkan, Samquake aka the Hutzilipochtli, Nibelung, etc. But in this video, I want to talk about one of the new artifact sets instead. The one I'll be discussing this time is called the Finale of the Deep Galleries, though in the future you can expect a video on either the second artifact set released in this version, or the world quest I already mentioned, or possibly even both. But since I just finished a thesis that I'm writing because of school, I can't say for sure when these videos will be out. Anyway, as usual, this video is just my interpretation of the lore, as it's officially released by Hoyo. I unfortunately can't read the developer's mind, so I just have to let them cook, use what they officially show us, and speculate about the rest. If you disagree with my interpretations or want to correct me on some points, please tell me in the comments. Well, before I start with the story of these artifacts, let me just say that the whole story is very likely about Skirk and her master Surtalogy, who are represented by an unknown girl and her master in the story. Just to make sure that we are all on the same page here, Skirk is Child's master that trained him in the past when he fell into an abyss, and his Foul Legacy transformation is a technique that he learned from her. She uses some sort of powers from beyond Teyvat, and she usually avoids any contact with the surface, as she calls it. She was trained by her master Surtalogy basically her whole life, and she is supposed to be a very powerful swordswoman. She also wears the exact feather of this artifact set in her hair. Surtalogy, aka the Foul, is one of the 5 sinners of Kandria, who sees the power of the Abyss as the Winster King triggered the Cataclysm 5 centuries ago. He is supposed to be a transcendent being, but there isn't much known about him other than that. Now let's get into the actual lore. The way I'll do this is that I'll first tell the story of the artifact piece, and then share some thoughts and speculations. Each line of the artifact set description starts with a sentence that reads: following her master's guidance, the girl ventured northward, traversing the freezing wastelands and the corridor of the fractured mirrors at the edge of the frozen sea. The master here, as I said before, is probably referring to Surtalogy, and the girl to Skirk. They mention freezing wastelands and the frozen sea here, which could refer to some part of Snezhnaya, but it's hard to tell if we should take this sentence literally. Let's start with the Plume of Death, also called the Deep Gallery's Distant Pact. After slaying many monsters in some ruins, she finally caught a glimpse of some sort of treasure among the abyssal remnants. She was however not the first outsider who got here. The Voyager, whose sentience traversed the cosmos, once met the Lord of the Dragons here, probably Nibelung, who at that time wasn't consumed by the abyss just yet. Anyway, the Voyager was described drifting through the cosmos. Her undying body slumbered away, and her mind drifted through the cosmos, charting countless peoples and civilizations fated to perish, pondering the ultimate truths, until a faint glimmer interested her. It came from Teyvat, from a primeval dragon that was born alongside it. Though this world would one day be consumed by an endless night, it shone more brilliantly than any other civilization the Voyager had ever seen. She delivered a pronouncement to the world's ruler. She said that she has seen the end, and how the cold tide of chaos drowns out all song, and all good and evil alike will vanish into silence. She asked why does the king refuse to abandon his people. She told him to forsake this world, fated for ruin, and journey with her beyond the stars. The dragon replied that he thanks her for telling him these truths, but though these creatures may seem ignorant to her, to him they are the meaning of the universe. If the end must come, then he will die with his sword, and she should bear witness to the path he chose, because he will lead his people onward to the stars. She made a vow of reunion with the Lord of Dragons here, but when she returned once more, the world was utterly changed. The world was bound beneath the heavenly principles and the 4 shades, and the light realm was split into 7 elements. The dragons have vanished, and the winged ones, aka the primordial ones, throne, now rule the radiance of the 3 moon sisters, Arya, Slet and Canon. She didn't want to disturb the new ruler, but she defied the laws of her kin and cast her mind inside the false sky. She then possessed the body of a certain young man, listening to the debates of priests in the City of Gold. The Golden City mentioned here is probably connected to the unified civilization that was present during the first era of the Primordial One's rule over Teyvat. It could also be the northern city of Hyperborea, which you may remember from the notes of René de Petrichor, who named one of the root cycles after this city. So, the dragon who was born together with Teyvat is most likely Nibelung. He refused to abandon his people and stayed in Teyvat, but when the Primordial One established the new order, he left the world and seized the forbidden knowledge. After returning, he led the ancient dragons to war with the heavenly principles, but this war caused immense destruction, and his entire race was defeated. The heavenly principles cast down the divine nails that changed the world to its new form, but that also meant that the dragons had to adapt to this new world and were forced to devolve to their current forms. I don't want to get into the specifics here, but from the new world quest it's implied that Nibelung was the second descender, and that he was consumed by the abyss and fought against the primordial one, so I don't know how exactly this event fits in the story. Also, the Voyager is referred to as a she many times throughout the story, however she probably possessed the body of a young man, so the pronouns used here are sometimes sometimes a bit confusing. The first angel mentioned later in the story is also mentioned in the records of June, so if you are interested, maybe you can read a bit more there. The goblet, also called the Deep Gallery's bestowed banquet, tells a story about the time when the light of the Moon Sisters still showed mercy upon the lands of the far north, probably Snezhnaya, and the envoys, aka the angels of Celestia, still gaze down upon the dust and mud. The people of the Golden City angered the heavens by questioning the progress of knowledge, and argued among themselves how to quell their wrath. The priests accused each other of sacrilege and such, and they sought to identify the main culprit. All of a sudden they heard a voice. If sin comes from the pursuit of knowledge, then ignorance is the true doctrine. If from rebellion, then only the lamb is truly righteous. If sin must be atoned for with blood, why is it said to stem from humanity? If the laws are perfect and flawless, why fear the act of inquiry? It was a mere boy of humble birth who somehow got here. They glared at him with angry looks, and in the end, the chief priest who wore the Tiara of Frost, which is an artifact by the way, dismissed the guards who rushed in. He told the young boy that if he means what he said, he should himself go to Irminsul and plead his case before the divine envoys. And so he went to the depths to seek answers from the first angel. This story connects to certain parts of lore we already heard before, for example the infamous book called Before Sun and Moon, where this very story of a boy going to Irminsul is also referenced. Anyway, the Flower of Life, also called the Deep Gallery's echoing song, tells us that after slaying many monsters in some ruins, she finally caught a glimpse of some sort of treasure before the Silver Tree. Well, as the text mentions, this happened before the withered dusk of a silver tree, which most likely means Irminsul. At that time, the Heavenly Principles, aka the Primordial One, still had complete rule over the world and its laws. The Voyager, who possessed a young man, ventured deep into the earth and met the first angel there. But the Voyager, who is called the Youth here, inquired her about the forbidden origins of the world. The angel trembled at these words, because she knew that this mortal uncovered an important secret, but the visitor sank to her dreams of beauty that never even grazed her mind. The power that the Heavenly Principles had over her broke apart, and she discovered what it was to serve herself. And since she loved him, she told him all the forbidden secrets. He said that what the Heavenly Principles did to the angels was very cruel, and that he would be summoned to free her of these shackles that bind her. He said that she should raise her eyes to the stars for the sake of everyone imprisoned by the Heavenly Principles. The Voyager said that he will become her sword, her shield and guide. Then she bowed down and kissed his forehead as countless icy blooms unfurled on the frigid silver tree. This moment of betrayal would, however, not go unnoticed, because at that very moment the Moon Sisters, Ariasund and Kanon, saw everything. So this again refers to the lore we already knew before, and that is the lore about the angels and how they were punished and forced to become their current form, which is the Series. The Circlet of Logos, also called the Deep Gallery's Lost Crown, tells a story about an age when the masses still bound to the Heavenly Principles and their decrees, when the Dawn Star's royal court still hung high above the clouds. The envoys descended from the light itself, and the mortals called them angels. They had pale silver wings and radiant crowns wrought of the bones of the earth and the stars of the sky. The name upon these crowns was the love promised unto all creatures by the Heavenly Principles, or perhaps a mandate to rule over all nations. With all your heart, soul and might, you shall love all the beings of this earth. They were the most loyal servants of Celestia, arbiters of justice. They wove a veil for the rule of the full sky, delivering revelations to all realms. But then the first angel met the Voyager beneath Irminsul in the far north, and in the star-like pupils saw a reflection of herself she had never known. She loved the young man, but this is a love that the heavens would never permit. Her crown suddenly fractured, and she drew it in the snow beneath Irminsul. Come now, come, let us recast these absurd laws with bone, and nourish the barren north with blood. Let us build a city and a tower that soars up to the clouds, that the people of the earth need weep bitter tears no longer. I cast this useless crown into the dust, that all earthly nations may breathe free of their shackles. Now this is a truly crazy passage, so, as was already stated before, the first angel fell in love with the young man, and the heavens didn't like that. But then they mentioned his star-shaped pupils. What first comes to my mind is that this has to somehow be connected to Khaenri'ah, in one way or another. My guess is that the pure-blood Khaenri'ahs have to be descendants of these two, who later built the nation they spoke about. It seems to Khaenri'ah coded to just be a coincidence, even with all the rejecting the Heavenly Principles and such. It could also be connected to why they chose to worship the Crimson Moon in the end, but who knows. The Sands of Aeon, also called the Deep Gallery's Moment of Oblivion, tells a story of an era that is now lost to memory, when the Golden City in the far north glittered like golden threads over the frozen wastelands. The furnaces of Deep Galleries thundered day and night, and artisans used forbidden methods to forge countless spirits upon the bones of giant beasts. They spun the fallen frost moonlight into flawless flesh and blood. They clad it to forms once frail and weak. The first envoy granted this authority to create two mortals. She hoped that they might one day create a perfect being that could merge with the world. Within the deep galleries, she whispered to her companion that she sees a time where the nations will no longer yearn for Celestia's mercy, and the cities will rise even higher than the throne and the stars. She saw humans sharing the sky with the gods they revered in past, no more tears, sorrow or death, because all will be complete. But the heavens brought down the divine nails, and the golden city was ruined. The angels were stripped of their names and forms, and they were cursed not to gaze to another's eyes, and not to offer love to one person because it was meant for all, and so they became the cities. Actually, the galleries here are often translated to corridor in other languages, so that makes a little more sense to me. In the end, we don't know what happened to the Voyager, but the Voyager is in my mind quite likely to actually be the third descender. At least that would make sense to me, since she definitely is from beyond Teyvat, and she seems extremely powerful and important. If she indeed was the third descender, I wonder if the Heavenly Principles eventually killed her and made the Gnosis. Anyway, this was my personal interpretation of the lore of this new artifact set. Unlike a lot of the lore in these sets, this one was more literal and straightforward, so I just repeated many of the original lines. Still, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you maybe even learned something new. But with that said, that was all for this video, so take care and I'll see you in the next one.